Hörmətli qonaqlar, hörmətli millət vəkilləri, dəyərli professorlar, tələbələr, xoş gəlmisiniz. Bildiyiniz kimi ADA Universitetinin Elmi Şurası Vaşinqtonda yerləşən John Hopkins Universitetinin Mərkəzi Asiya Qafqaz İnstitutunun rəhbəri və yaradıcısı doktor Frederick Starrı ADA Universitetinin fəxri doktor adı ilə təltif etmişdir. Və bu günləri biz cənab doktor Frederick Starra həmin diplomu təqdim edəcəyik. Eyni zamanda bu günləri sizin diqqətinizə cənab Frederick Starrın yeni kitabını təqdim etmək istəyirdik. Kitabın da adı Unudulmuş Maariflənmə, Ərəb işğalından Tamerlana qədər Mərkəzi Asiyanın Qızıl dövrü. Bu çox böyük bir elmi işdir. Bu barədə bugün danışılacaq. Sizi bu günləri tədbirdə görməkdən çox şadıq. Təşəkkür edirik ki, siz bizim dəvətimizi qəbul etmişsiniz. İndi isə açılış sözü üçün sözü vermək istəyirik ADA Universitetinin rektoru, Xarici İşlər Nazirinin müavini Səfir Hafiz Pashayev.
Çok sağ olun. Hoş gelmişsiniz bir de bizim üniversiteye. Hamınızı səmimi qəlbdən salamlayıram və sizə təşəkkür edirəm ki, siz gəlmişsiniz. Distinguished members of Parliament, guests of ADA, students, professors, ladies and gentlemen, today we are gathered here to honor a great academician and public figure, a good friend of Azerbaijan, and personally my dear friend, Professor Frederick Starr, with an honorary doctorate degree from ADA University. This is also an opportunity and pleasure for our university to host the presentation of his new book, Lost Enlightenment, Central Asia's Golden Age from Arab Conquest to Tamerlane, which has received numerous impressive reviews already, including being in Christopher Hitchens' 10 best essays of the year, as well as winning the New York Times columnist David Brooks' Sydney Award for 2009. This is truly a remarkable book, writing of which preoccupied 10 years of his life. When Dr. Starr was asked just yesterday how he came to this idea to write this book, he gave an amazingly simple answer. This is the book I would want to read myself. If you visit Dr. Starr's house in DC, you will immediately understand his aspirations and success of his outstanding research. His house interior decorations consist of many archaeological and historical art crafts from same region. He has managed to establish the unique atmosphere which takes you back to the golden age of the Central Asia and helps you better understand the region's age of Renaissance. We can say many good words about accomplishments of Dr. Starr. First and foremost, he is a remarkable researcher. Having earned degrees from universities such as Yale, Cambridge, and Princeton, he has dedicated his whole life to the study of Russian, Central Asian, and Turkic nations' history. His research on the countries of Greater Central Asia, their history, development, internal dynamics, as well as on the US policy towards the region, has resulted in 22 books and 200 articles. Dr. Starr is a frequent commentator on affairs of these regions and the author of the numerous articles in journals including Foreign Affairs, Foreign Policy, the National Review, Far East Economic Review, and op-eds in various leading American and international newspapers like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and others. Dr. Starr is also a frequent commentator on Azerbaijani politics. When I became an ambassador for our young nation in Washington, very few people knew much about our country and its hardships. I was desperate for friends and allies. At that time, Dr. Starr, whose wisdom, deep knowledge, and prolific writings were very helpful to our nation and personally to myself. He is one of those scholars who helped me to put Azerbaijan on the map of Washington's policymakers. He was instrumental in helping me and my staff to promote Azerbaijan's interests and, most importantly, to explain its policies and challenges to various US politicians and scholars. Later on, Dr. Starr went on to establish the Central Asia Caucasus Institute and Silk Road Studies Program, a joint transatlantic research center affiliated with Paul Nietzsche School of Advanced International Studies, Johns Hopkins University in Washington, and the Institute for Security and Development Policy in Stockholm. An interesting episode about this center is in my memory up to this day. When Dr. Starr announced the idea and intention to establish the Central Asia Institute, I told him, why only Central Asia? Why not Caucasus also? I said to him, you must include the Caucasus explicitly. And if you do, I will become your first speaker. And Dr. Starr did, and I was indeed the first speaker of this institute. Coincidentally, and to my great happiness and pleasure, my last public speech in Washington, D.C., in the capacity of ambassador, was also at this institute. During these years, the institute has done a remarkable job covering the history, politics, economics of our greater region, and keeping it within the range of interest of US policymakers. Dr. Starr is an impressive, accomplished university manager. He was the founding chairman of the Kennan Institute in Washington and served as vice president of Tulane University and president of the Aspen Institute and Oberlin College. He was closely involved in planning the University of Central Asia and is trustee of Nazarbayev University in Kazakhstan. Most importantly, he has been irreplaceable advisor to me when I was starting and setting up Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy. He has provided invaluable consultations regarding the planning of ADA, its curriculums, recruitment of professors, international linkages, its degree program, and strategic oversight. Today, I am sure he is proud, as I myself, about our achievements. I want to conclude this introduction with one other important detail. Both Dr. Starr and I are big fans of jazz, and I have greatly enjoyed those moments of jazz which we have experienced in his hometown in New Orleans. Dr. Starr is a founding member of Louisiana Repertory Jazz Assembly of New Orleans. He founded the Greater New Orleans Foundation, the single largest non-governmental sponsor of post-Katrina recovery of that city. He has written 6 books on New Orleans and has promised to bring his band to Baku for the graduation of first ADA Bachelor Program class in 2016. Dr. Starr, today, I think it's for every member of our institution, of our university, it's our honor to present you with honorary doctorate degree from ADA University for your achievements in historical research, promotion of the US-Azerbaijan relations, and for your leadership in managing universities around the world. I wish you all the best in your future academic and personal endeavors, and hope to see you at our university for many years to come. Thank you very much.
Çox sağ olun Hafiz müəllim. İndi isə söz verilir ADA Universitetinin tədris və elmi işlər üzrə prorektoru Dr. Patrick Quinn'a.
Honored guests, members of Parliament, fellow colleagues, audience, I want to talk for the next 10 minutes, if I may, about the book we are here to celebrate. And I have to start by talking about myself for a moment, and then I'll move forward. So bear with me for the first paragraph. Ever since I moved into my 10th floor apartment that I inhabit in the center of Baku, I have been mesmerized by the construction of a long, large, complex building being built across the street. Every morning, rain or shine, I stand on my balcony eating my ubiquitous banana and watch the structure take form. My scrutiny is intense, and I can honestly proclaim I now understand the basics of how to erect an apartment structure. How you build the stairwells and create floors, how you pour cement, how the electric grid and water pipes fit into the apartment building. In a very real sense, I understand the history of this building and will continue to watch the building's development as long as I am in Azerbaijan. In a sense, I am dedicated and curious about every aspect of this structure. Make no mistake, Dr. Starr's Lost Enlightenment, Central Asia's Golden Age from the Arab Conquest to Tamerlane, is written by a scholar no less dedicated to the history of Central Asia than I am to my apartment building. In his introduction, he states that he was motivated to write his history because he couldn't find the answers to questions he wanted to know the answers to. While traveling through the Karakum Desert of Turkmenistan or in the frozen wastes of the Pamirs, often called the roof of the world. Gnawing curiosity appears to be the prime motivation behind Dr. Starr's journey, and this infection is passed on to the readers of his book. Somehow, he sets the stage of this epic story by presenting the key players, the dramatis personae, as he calls them, we will encounter on our sojourn. Over here is Alexander the Great. There is the great thinker of pre-Islamic age, the Zoroastrian native of Merv, Bogos Ohamner, the brilliant Iranian who invented the game of backgammon, and also taught the game of chess, was not only an analogy of war and strategic moves at its core, but also taught what is learned during a chess match could be practiced in daily life in order to prepare its players for adversity, both emotionally and intellectually. In the book, we meet the brilliant Ferdowsi, whose Persian epic, Seyhanema, or the Book of Kings, with its 50,000 verses, is one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written. The German philosopher Goethe praised it. The Victorian British poet Matthew Arnold took the central myth of Rustum and Sohrab from the Book of Kings and turned it into his own epic poem, Sohrab and Rustum. And even today, in Khalid Hosseini's contemporary novel, The Kite Runner, the influence of Ferdowsi can be found. By the time we finish our lively encounter with the poet in Dr. Starr's book, the reader feels that Ferdowsi's conclusion is his own. The conclusion that Ferdowsi writes in the Book of Kings goes like this: I have reached the end of this great history. I shall not die. These seeds I've sown will save my name and my reputation from the grave. And men of sense and wisdom will proclaim, when I have gone, my praises and my fame. Obviously, the compilation of history is at the core of this study. So when we are introduced to the character who I would hazard is one of Dr. Starr's favorite historical figures in the book, Abu Rayhan al-Biruni, his praise is palpable. Biruni's the chronology of ancient nations, above all, is written as a celebration of reason over superstition and faith. With his creation of the first global calendar system, which allowed for the fixing of dates from all over the Arabic, Central Asian, and the Eastern European world, history would be written in a sequential manner, which would allow for cause and effect analysis and rid history of many of its exaggerated myths and false information masquerading as facts. In Dr. Starr's study, as in life, we also have some villains to navigate and understand. For me, the darkest character in his book is Abu Hamid Muhammad al-Ghazali, the 11th century Iranian theologian and philosopher whose powerful, the incoherence of the philosophers challenged the entire Avicennian-centered school of rationalist reasoning and replaced faith as the only sure way to an understanding of the nature of God and his universe. Anticipating later arguments voiced in Kant's Critique of Pure Reason and Søren Kierkegaard's Either Or, al-Ghazali challenged the Neoplatonists' explanations of God and attempted to refute their reasoning that a universe actually had a beginning in time. Eventually, al-Ghazali became a Sufi and embraced the spiritual and mystical arguments of this sect of Islam. For Starr, the wholesale embracing of Ghazali's argument of faith over reason begins the demise of Central Asia's intellectual supremacy in the known world. However, he concludes that this largely overlooked intellectual flowering in Central Asia leaves us with a question. We need to inquire what conditions were in place in order for these vibrant cultures and space for philosophical speculations to flourish as they did from 500 to 1100 AD. If we can find the answer to this question and attempt to emulate whatever it was that afforded such a flourishing of ideas and transformation of societies, we might be able now to apply some of these strategies to our own world. One final reflection on this breathtaking journey to Central Asia remains. Ultimately, one cannot afford to disregard that this volume articulates something profound about all of us as individuals and the civilizations which we inhabit so comfortably. The trajectory of this book is organic. That is, it painstakingly observed what occurs when new ideas are introduced into a culture and they begin to take root in the soil of civilization. The book carefully chronicles the stirring of change and how it engenders within itself a whiff of unpolluted air and excitement grows. Like sunflowers turning to the sun, we begin to feel the heat and are energized by a new cause to improve or to explain our world. We may sacrifice our belongings in order to gestate this marvelous idea or concept. We may sacrifice our time, our finances, our humanity, and even our lives to enrich one's tribe, one's city, one's country, or one's empire for an ideal beyond ourselves. But ultimately, it is all for nothing. It is all for naught. The force of time, intertwined with the inevitable forces of nature and decay, determines that all must eventually turn to dust. The most amazing urban complex in 500 AD was the city of Merv in southern Turkmenistan. By 802, Dr. Starr exalts Merv as arguably the best city on earth for a young scientist to study. Irrigation, dam building, ecology, astronomy, trade, and engineering flourished. However, by the year 1000, Merv was reduced to rubble by Mehmet of Ganzai's forces, and a new empire was reestablished, only to be destroyed by the Mongols just 200 years later. The shadow of a non-escapable melancholy of the human condition resonates throughout this entire book. The photographic plates present visual evidence of the ruins of the walls of Balkh, once known as the mother of cities, or the miniature painting of the vizier Nizam al-Mulk being ruthlessly murdered by Ismaili assassins, which triggered events that would lead to the Ghazali's religious jihad, all demonstrates the fragility of the human condition. Frederick Starr's book, Lost Enlightenment, encouraged me to find my edition of Percy Shelley's poetry, and turn to its well-worn pages to find Ozymandias, Shelley's 1818 poem, which tells of a wandering traveler who discovers two vast bodiless legs of stone in the middle of a vast, empty desert. The empty pedestal on which the great Egyptian pharaoh statue once stood is still emblazoned with these ironic words: "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. This same melancholy reflection of mankind's futile attempt to leave proof of their own existence echoes repeatedly from Dr. Starr's erudite and scrupulously researched book concerning the overlooked contributions of Central Asians to science, art, engineering, philosophy, religion, and civilization from the Arab Conquest to Tamerlane. Thank you very much.
Çok sağ olun Doktor Patrick Quinn. Bu cənab Patrick Quinn kitab haqqında çox ətraflı məlumat verdi. İndi isə biz Doktor Frederick Starr'ın Vaşinqtondakı fəaliyyəti, həmin institutun fəaliyyəti barədə biraz ətraflı məlumat üçün sözü vermək istəyirik ADA Universitetinin rektorunun müşaviri Səfir Jack Mareskaya.
Rector, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really honored to be able to say a few words today about Fred Starr We've been colleagues and friends for many years, and he has instructed many American diplomats, including myself, in this region. And so I would like to just tell you a little bit about the role he has played, especially in Washington and in the development of American policy toward the former Soviet Union, Central Asia, the whole region that we're in, including Azerbaijan and the Caucasus. When I was asked by the president after the breakup of the Soviet Union to visit all of the newly independent states and to establish United States relations with each of these countries, it was a real puzzle. It turned out that our experts on this region were all trained to see things through the perspective of Moscow. And we did not have experts on each of the individual countries that emerged. So it was difficult at first to find people who really could advise and give us some wisdom about how to develop our relationships with these newly independent states. It was a little-known region for the United States, and it turned out that our Soviet experts really saw things through the perspective of Moscow. And that wasn't exactly the perspective that we wanted to extend and to follow in our relations with these new states. But looking around the United States, it was hard to find scholars and institutions that had anything other than this perspective. I hasten to add that no one expected the USSR to break up, so it was, I think, logical that we would have developed our experts on the region thinking of it as a single country. It was logical, but logic, unfortunately, was not the situation at the time, and we were surprised, and we had to adjust and develop a new kind of thinking, new perspectives, new expertise about each of these newly independent states. I say all of this because one of the only places in the country where we could find expertise on these different areas in different countries was, in fact, at SAIS in Washington. And that was due to Fred, who had been a student of this region for such a long time already that he understood these differences in a way that very few American scholars understood it. This happened again after 9/11. After 9/11, the United States, of course, had to gear up for a war in a country that no one in our country would ever want to go into, that is to say, Afghanistan. It was far away, it was unknown, it was very risky. But because of the 9/11 events, there was an obligation felt throughout the country to go there. But here again, we had very little expertise. And we needed that kind of expertise because, as you may have noticed, throughout history, the United States doesn't like to go into countries that don't have a beach. A beach is very important because that's where you can land Marines. If a country does not have a beach, it's not really a country the United States likes to go into militarily. I think this is a kind of a general rule. If you think about it, I think you'll come up with the same conclusion. But Fred and his institute were a repository of information and expertise about this whole region. And so he and his colleagues became, I think, unique advisors to the government throughout the period of the Afghan War and thereafter. It happens that here too, I was involved because, as some of you may know, I was seeking to build a pipeline across Afghanistan when the Al-Qaeda hit two of our embassies in East Africa, and we had to cancel the project. The whole project was canceled from one day to the next. So this was, I think, a traumatic period for the United States, and looking for reliable expertise was a real challenge. In Washington, a few weeks ago, I heard Fred give the opening statement at a conference which was focused on what was happening in Ukraine. I didn't have a chance to talk to him at that time because he was so much in demand that his handlers escorted him out of the room very quickly after his declaration. But I found his statement really solid, very strong, very rational, based on his long study of this whole region. It's not an easy situation for Washington because Ukraine, in a way, doesn't have a beach. And a lot of countries in the former Soviet space don't have beaches. And so to find what the United States can do in such a situation is a puzzle. I'll leave it to intellectuals like Fred to find the answer to that puzzle because I'm no longer a diplomat and it's no longer my business. But I think over time, his voice, his expertise has made a real difference for United States foreign policy. And so it's my privilege to cite all of that today. Fred has two different hats in a way. He is this profound intellectual who can produce a book like The Lost Enlightenment about a region that very few other people have ever looked at in this way. But at the same time, he's a very practical Washingtonian who understands the issues, understands what the United States can and can't do in situations, and can give very practical advice. And that, I think, is what has made him such a valuable person to U.S. governments over many years. I'd just like to finish by saying that Fred is also a truly American character. He has a great sense of humor. He actually likes to drink beer. He likes jazz. He loves New Orleans. There's probably no city in the United States that's as American as New Orleans, has its ups and downs just like Americans do. He sees the humorous side of events at all times, and for sure, he is the dean of American studies of this region. And we all understand that, we all respect that, we all praise him for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Çox sağ olunuz. İndi isə fəxri doktor mükafatını təqdim etmək üçün mən ilk öncə bizim dekanlardan xahiş edirəm ki, səhnəyə gəlsinlər.
Now comes the part of the ceremony which is well awaited. With the recommendation of the University Senate and by virtue of the authority vested in him, the Rector confers on Dr. F. Frederick Starr the degree of Honorary Doctor in Humanities for his achievements in historical research, contribution to the development of universities around the world, and promotion of the United States-Azerbaijan bilateral relations. With all rights, privileges, and honors pertaining thereto, we grant ADA University at Azerbaijan in the city of Baku, May 21st, 2014, this degree.
All right.
This is for you.
Ambassador Dr. Pashayev, members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, and esteemed faculty, colleagues from the faculty. Please accept my deepest thanks for the honor you bestowed on me today. But it is not false modesty on my part to acknowledge that, above all, you are honoring, or better, we are honoring, the great scientists, philosophers, technologists, artists, theologians, and poets who, 1,000 years ago, made Greater Central Asia the center of the world. The center of the world. And rightly so. Let me just again mention one of these geniuses, Al-Biruni. Sitting in what is now Turkmenistan and then in Ghazni in Afghanistan, Biruni hypothesized the existence of North and South America. He also, as we heard, invented the first universal history. And he conceived the possibility of a heliocentric solar system, all by 1035 AD. Or what about Al-Khwarizmi from what is now Uzbekistan, who reinvented and expanded algebra and gave his name, Al-Khwarizmi, to algorithms, the basis of modern computing? Or what about the poet Omar Khayyam, the tent maker from Khurasan, who calculated the length of the solar year to 11 decimal points? Think of it. And who came this close to inventing a non-Euclidean geometry. Now, it's fashionable today to speak of the Silk Road, but this is a 19th century German concept that distorts the reality. During the Golden Age, far more ideas flowed out of Central Asia to China and to Europe than the reverse. And we neglect the fact that the links between Central Asia, the Caucasus, and India were particularly close in the realm of ideas. Thanks to this, people in Central Asia and the Caucasus transmitted India's number system, which we mistakenly call Arabic numbers, to the West. And also the concept of zero and negative numbers. All this was built on intense, continent-wide interaction based on transport and on trade. Central Asia is the one place where all continental corridors cross. Ideas followed trade. What role did the Caucasus and the territory of Azerbaijan play in this intellectual flowering? Important question. Well, a lot. Azerbaijan can boast of the great astronomer Nasir al-Din Tusi, and of the wonderful poet Nizami. But Central Asia's golden age was an era of great urban centers. In 1200, we heard about this, in 1200, Merv in present-day Turkmenistan and Balkh in Afghanistan were among the largest cities on earth. Merv was the largest. Baku existed, to be sure, but foreign rulers, foreign conquest of this territory, and the need to assimilate new immigrants made the development of great cities here impossible for the time. Now, in general, what lessons for today can we draw from this past golden age? First, that the societies that produced such innovators were pluralistic. Muslims were solidly in the majority, but there were also Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians, and they all worked together. When uniformity set in, later, intellectual creativity declined. Pluralism. Second, there is more than one model for the cultural and intellectual development of Muslim societies. Their central role in world civilization warrants our treating these new societies in Central Asia, the new states in Central Asia and in the Caucasus. It warrants our treating them as subjects, juridical subjects, not as objects to be manipulated by others or outsiders. In other words, they've earned this right in a civilizational sense. The respect that they are owed as subjects and not as objects. Third, the central role, fourth, that the common intellectual and cultural heritage linking Central Asia, Afghanistan, Khorasan, and Azerbaijan provides a solid basis for constructive interaction and cooperation today. In other words, the Golden Age provides a way to move beyond narrow ethnic and religious identities. And what about Azerbaijan today? Look at the fine city that has arisen here on the Absheron Peninsula. You Azerbaijanis are creating the greatest city that has ever existed in this region. And like great cities in the past, it is becoming a transport hub. In Russian, an uzil, and Azerbaijan da Negliat Gavshagi, linking Europe and the Middle East with China, with India, and with Southeast Asia. Moreover, this new university demonstrates clearly that modern Baku aspires to be not just a center of commerce and of wealth, but of culture and of the intellect. This institution was initiated by President Ilham Aliyev and is being translated into reality under the leadership of a distinguished physicist and experienced diplomat, Dr. Pashayev. A committed international team of young professors and then talented students are giving this institution vitality today. Together, they are creating an open and free atmosphere for ideas. An open and free atmosphere for ideas. They are removing taboos, and they embrace reason and logic as their guides. Finally, they open their minds and the minds of their students to the wisdom of the entire world without barriers. In all this, it seems to me, they are reviving the spirit of the golden age of which I wrote in my book, the era here that gave us Nasir al-Din Tusi and Nizami. Let us therefore salute Azerbaijan, Baku, and ADA University, its professors and students, and also its dedicated and soft-spoken leader, Dr. Pashayev. As you generously honor me today, let us all honor this wonderful institution, ADA University. So hats off to all of you, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
Çox sağ olunuz, əziz qonaqlar. Bizim tədbirimiz sona bitdi. Biz sizi çay fasiləsinə dəvət edirik və yəqin ki, qonaqlar foto şəkil də çəkmə imkanı olacaq. Congratulations again on behalf of ADA, and now we are going to reception. So, pictures, yeah. Group photo.